Disneyland Forward. It was announced about a year and a half ago, and it created a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm about the prospect of more Disneyland. In the year and a half since, not much has happened. In fact, I would probably say less than nothing has happened if you consider the recent scandal that hit the mayor's office. That is to say, Disneyland Forward is a project that at its core was a lobbying effort by Disney to get the city of Anaheim to change the way certain Disney-owned properties are zoned, making it as much political as it is simply about creating entertainment for guests. As such, the corruption scandal that hit the mayor's office had people wondering, believing that perhaps this project was completely dead, at least for the short term. But recently there was a small bit of info revealed by a city spokesperson that suggests that while Disneyland Forward is still very much a long-term project, it's not quite dead yet. Today we'll talk about that news as well as the current makeup and possible future of this Anaheim City Council's office and how that might affect the prospects of Disneyland Forward. And we'll start that conversation at D23 actually. It has come and gone, but that is typically a place where Disney might reveal some of their biggest news regarding Disneyland. But there was no Disneyland Forward news mentioned. Not that I was expecting any. I just want to start there. Nothing was mentioned at D23. Nonetheless, Spectrum News took that opportunity to ask Anaheim officials what the current status is of Disneyland Forward. And per the city, that project was still in its early phases, which those are words to me that say nothing is happening, nothing has happened. Early stages means nothing. However, Mike Leister, who is the Anaheim City spokesman, told Spectrum News that we are likely to see Disney begin the process of city approval consideration in 2023. He uses the word begin, which does seem to confirm that nothing has happened so far. But it at least suggests that something will happen. They're expecting something to happen. And it also seems to confirm that something that is going to happen is going to be related to getting the city's approval, i.e. the zoning considerations that are at the heart of Disneyland Forward. Quick primer on the generally accepted purpose of Disneyland Forward. If Disneyland is to expand, it has to be in areas that aren't currently zoned for theme park development. There aren't any. There are no more spaces left on properties that Disney owns that are for theme park development. The eligible sites that Disney can expand on are all parking lots. There's the Simba lot where we all parked when going to downtown Disney during the lockdown. There's the downtown Disney parking lot, the Disneyland Hotel parking lot, and the Toy Story lot. In all three cases, Disney could not, on a whim, just decide to put theme park in those places. Every parcel everywhere is zoned for a specific use, and you can only build for that specific purpose. So Disney comes up with Disneyland Forward as a way to motivate the city of Anaheim to change the way that those parcels are currently zoned. This is why we often remind viewers that Disneyland Forward was never an actual real thing. It's just an idea. Which brings us back to the news that the city of Anaheim is expecting Disney to make those approval requests sometime in 2023. Now, if that is the case, if that's what happens, it will have been 2 years since the original announcement. Why wait that long? Why wait until now? Why wait until 2023 to do it? As mentioned earlier, the timing presently is not very good. And probably the last 6 months or so has not been very good considering the corruption scandal that has centered around the Anaheim City Mayor's office. The Anaheim City Mayor was investigated by the FBI. He resigned his office due to this corruption scandal. Considering that, it would be very difficult to get any project going between Disney and the city of Anaheim that requires any kind of persuasion on the part of Disney. They would have to persuade the city of Anaheim to change how they zone things. The city office is presently under a microscope, and it's because doing just that kind of thing, doing favors for big business, or at least the appearance. They can't give the appearance of doing favors to big business right now. Now, those favors weren't being done for Disney before. It was for the Anaheim Angels, the baseball team. But one could easily make the connection that those two entities work in the same playground. So that put a freeze, in the short term on any kind of progress on that project. Now, things get interesting because this is an election year, and there's likely going to be a change, or there could be a change in the political makeup of the Anaheim City Council. And that political makeup would go a long way to determining, if things go Disney's way. So what are the prospects of this Anaheim City Council's political makeup shifting in favor of Disney? I would say it's kind of a toss-up, but I actually am inclined to think that things will be in their favor, most likely after the election. Start with the understanding that it is typical, historically speaking, that whenever there is a major issue, a major challenge to a political office, there is reform that follows. Voters vote in the opposite direction. There are 3 city council spots up for re-election this year and the mayor's office. And considering there are just 6 districts, 6 city council spots, and the 1 mayor's position, that's a that's a majority of the total 7 spots available that decide how things occur in the city of Anaheim. So how do things look? The mayor pro tem, Tyler O'Neill, he's the man who took over for the outgoing mayor. He's the temporary mayor. He's running for re-election, with the other leading candidate being Ashley Aitken, who would be considered the reform candidate. O'Neill is a Republican, often voted along with Harry Sedut, the former mayor currently involved in the corruption scandal. He was pro-Disney. However, in this case, despite this being a reform ballot, O'Neill does still appear to be the frontrunner, which is good for Disney. As for the 3 city council spots up for re-election, there are candidates in all 3 districts that are up for re-election that could be described as reform candidates. Candidates that are pro-small business and anti-subsidy. Pro-small business in the city of Anaheim means anti-Disney. And all 3 could win. However, the other 3 districts that are not up for re-election this year could be described as being Disney-friendly. 2 were supported by Disney via campaign contributions, so you have to assume in this case that Disney views them as being Disney-friendly. With the 3rd being a Republican who was endorsed by the previous mayor, Harry Sedut, and endorsed by Tyler O'Neill, which again suggests more than likely he's at least pro-big business, which means that Disney would have to carry just 1 of those districts that are up for re-election in order to maintain a majority in the city council office. And I do the air quotes because, of course, this is all just speculation. A council person is defined by considerably more than just what is their position on the Disney company or big business in general, for that matter. I mention these things only as part of the conversation in terms of, whether or not Disney can feel optimistic or pessimistic about their future post-election. And that's why I believe that they can be at least optimistic. And I feel like that the Anaheim City Council person who made those comments earlier feels the same way, which is why he suggested that it's likely we're going to see some movement from Disney in 2023. So considering all of this, now that we've talked about all of that, how does that affect the future? What is the timeline for Disneyland Forward? Again, like I said before, even if Disney does make a move in 2023, that'll have been 2 years that it took them to do that. 2 years to do basically nothing, file paperwork. 2 years just to get to the point where we're going to have a conversation, about whether or not Disney can do the things that they want to do. 2 years to file the first paperwork for what is still a mythical project. In other words, even with this news, we're still a very long way from there being any sort of substantive progress on Disneyland Forward. Now, speaking of that actual substance, that announcement that came it was a year and a half ago, that announcement came with a single piece of concept art that we all tried to glean some information from. We had some fun trying to figure out what their plans were. But since then, I have found a couple things that have me a bit concerned about how ambitious this project really can be. The plan suggests the expansion will happen in the Simba lot on the left and the downtown Disney and Disneyland Hotel parking lots on the right in this concept art. The suggestion also is that the left side would expand for DCA and the right side would be an expansion of Disneyland, with downtown Disney being extended right through the middle. My first concern is Walnut Avenue. That's the street in the rear that runs parallel to this property. On the other side of Walnut Avenue, that faded area back there, that's all residential tract, apartments and homes. Note that there are no other cases on the Disneyland Resort property where actual theme park runs up borders residential zoned areas. DCA on Catella, that's all hotels. That's the Anaheim Convention Center. Then on the opposite side, Disneyland, they run up against Ball Road, a freeway, and then more hotels, but no residential. Now, that's where I start to think about sound ordinances. There have to be sound ordinances that would limit Disney's ability to put theme park right up against Walnut Avenue. I don't think you could build proper theme park right up against Walnut without some sort of sound buffer in between. Couple that with the fact that I see very little in the way of backstage operations. The top left, top right and bottom left corners of this concept art all appear to show actual theme park being developed right up on the edges. Now, before I continue, I understand this is just concept art. I've said myself, don't believe anything that you see in this concept art. It is all just mythical. But I do mention these things. I do have this conversation, if only to temper people's enthusiasm for what the expectations might be. Temper, like we're going to get something grand and amazing on these, on this property. The art shows what could maybe be 2 lands per side. Lands here and here on the DCA side, and lands here and here on the Disneyland side. Factoring the need for sound buffers and backstage spaces, I feel like it might be more realistic to expect maybe just 1 land per side, especially when you consider how big they build everything these days. Galaxy's Edge, for example, that's 15 acres. The 2 lots in question here are roughly 25 acres each. Shrink that down a bit for the sound buffers on at least the walnut border, and you're looking at maybe 15 or 20 acres each. Sizable lots, to be sure, big enough to do something really great, something really creative and amazing, but I'm not sure that it's big enough to hold 2 lands. Unless Disney goes old school and builds them like Adventureland, where 1 street makes a land, which, by the way, I am totally okay with. I would love to see Disney start thinking smaller rather than bigger. I love how much there is to do in Fantasyland. Fantasyland A, as I call it, is just 5 acres. And in that space, you've got 5 dark rides, a carousel, Mad Tea Party, Casey Jr., and Storybook Land canal boats, all in 5 acres. I would love to see them take that kind of approach to this property. I would love that. But you know what I would really prefer, actually, now that we're blue skying stuff, we're just thinking about what they could do there. I think I would really prefer them to make that entire space, both sides, California Adventure. Consider that a ticket to California Adventure is the same price as a ticket to Disneyland. However, you get, not even half of the show for that price. The value just doesn't even compare between DCA and Disneyland. So considering that, I would love to see DCA grow. I'm very much in favor of this just for that reason alone. But it's unlikely, when you look at how things are set up, it's unlikely that they actually could do that, because downtown Disney, bisects those two sides of the property. Makes it very difficult to get guests from one side of that property to the other. First, guests would have to walk a considerable distance through the downtown Disney and the Disneyland Hotel, areas to get to the other side of that property. Not to mention, it's probably a gate. You would have to exit one side, go into a public, open, common area, and then re-enter the park on the other side. Having said that, though, it would be pretty poor design, I think, just in general, to set this thing up and not connect them somehow. There has to be some way to do it. You're asking, otherwise, for a guest who's, let's say he's in that expanded area of DCA, you're going to ask them, and he wants to go to the other side. He's got to come all the way down to DCA proper, leave the main entrance, cross the Esplanade, go into Disneyland, then go all the way back up towards, I'm assuming, Critter Country, which I believe is where the cross is, where the path would be to connect. Go all the way back to Critter Country if your goal is to do those two sides of the park. I hope they can come up with, if this is a real thing, if it is not mythical, I hope that they can come up with some way to join those two parcels together without having to go all that way. I guess what I'm saying is this seems really difficult to do. This project seems really difficult to pull off. That's even if they get the approval from the city to change the zoning and to build in those places. But here's to hoping they can, because I know that Disneyland fans out there very, very much want more Disneyland. Just got to find a way. And with that, I'll close on this little small story. It's related, but it may give you some hope in terms of more hope, I should say, in 2023 when Disney starts working on this. The city of Anaheim does appear to be in the mood for approving projects. News broke the other day that the city of Anaheim approved the OC Vibe project. It's a huge expansion of the area around the Honda Center. That's where the Mighty Ducks play. And that's going to include hotels, concert venues, restaurants, mixed income and affordable housing, parks, and public spaces. That to go with, as I mentioned, the already present Honda Center and the beautiful looking public transit hub Arctic. Looks great and a vast improvement over what's there today, which is mostly, I think, industrial, which, by the way, is a good sign for Disney and their hopes for Disneyland Forward, as I have to assume at least some of that space is not zoned for the use that they're intending according to this concept art. Certainly, some of that space is industrial, and certainly some of that space is not residential. You drive through that area, you can see there's not a lot of hope for residential there. So it seems unlikely this project could be done without some kind of zoning change. And before we go, I just want to point out that this concept art is beautiful, but I do have one question. Are they planning to fill the Santa Ana River with water? Because that's what I'm seeing in this concept art. That looks like the Santa Ana River full of water. I think I've seen it full of water with any water in it at all, like it is in this concept art. I think it's maybe once in the past 10 years or more, and that was after about a week straight of rain. Otherwise, the Santa Ana River is just rock and dust. Just curious. Otherwise, it looks wonderful. Follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at FreshBakedDisney. And if you like our show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/freshbaked. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And Fresh Baked